Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here at Crossroads. Crossroads is a project of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa. I'm Connie Ryan. I'm the Executive Director of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa, and we are very glad to have you with us today. And happy to have folks that are on live stream as well. We have lots of folks watching on the live stream and lots of folks in the room. And that kind of is telling of the interest of our subject today and talking about what we call the reckless gun amendment. Crossroads is every month, the third Friday of the month, and we talk about a whole array of issues that are important in our communities and important to Iowans. And so I'm really glad that you have joined us. And I'm really glad to have my friends up here on the panel. We have Matt Sinovic, who is the Executive Director of Progress Iowa. We have Tom Chapman, who is the Executive Director of the Iowa Catholic Conference. And we have Wendy, Rector, I don't know, title, just call her Wendy. Abrahamson, who is at the Episcopal Church in Grinnell, Iowa, and is the Rector there. So, yes. I think that was all for Wendy, so, right? And I am very fortunate to work with the three of them on an array of issues. And Tom and I hang out together a lot at the State House and work on different issues. Wendy has been a lobbyist for the Episcopal Church for several years. Matt and I cause trouble all the time. And true, yes. But we came together last summer, a year ago, to form a coalition, and I'm not going to steal all their thunder. I'm going to let them talk about it. But we came together to form a coalition because we knew that Iowans needed to understand, needed to be educated about the ballot measure that was going to be on the ballot this November. And so I'm grateful for their work and all of the members of the coalition that have done an enormous amount of work over the year, including Rita Carter, who's sitting over here, who is actually the chair of Iowans for Responsible Gun Laws. And she begged off from being up here because she has some issues with her voice, and so she turned it over to the three folks who are in front of you. So I'm going to stop talking and just say thank you for being here and for sharing the information and all of the wisdom that you have on this issue. And more claps. So I'm going to hand it over to Tom Chapman.
Well, first we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit and talk about what our groups have been doing on this issue. I'm Tom. I work for the Iowa Catholic Conference, which is the public policy group for the Catholic bishops of Iowa. I've been working for the Catholic Church for about more than 30 years now, and just finished up on my 16th session as an advocate at the state capitol. So I'm really happy to be here. Now, during this time, we've been working with a lot of you and other groups in opposition to several recent changes that we've seen in Iowa's gun laws. One was the Stand Your Ground legislation in 2017, and that removed any duty to retreat in the face of any perceived threat. We opposed that, but that did pass. Then in 2021, we all worked against the requirement, taking away the requirement that you needed a permit to carry a weapon. Now we're considered, permitless carry here in Iowa. And so that's taken place. And so we're happy to work on this as well. If this current proposal that we're going to talk about today goes into the Constitution, I really think it will tie the hands of any future legislators if they want to change their mind about any of those things.
Thanks, Tom. As Connie said, my name is Matt Sinovic. I'm the Executive Director of Progress Iowa. Progress Iowa, we are a communications and issue advocacy organization. We've been around for 10 years. And our role in the progressive community and in the state is to help connect people with their government and help empower people and organizations to tell their story and to deliver a winning message. So we work on a variety of issues, and as Connie mentioned, we cause trouble together, but hopefully it's good trouble, strategic trouble, well thought out and planned trouble. At least when it's going well, that's how it works. But our role in this, we've been working on gun safety issues for a number of years, and Connie mentioned that she lobbies, Tom lobbies. Wendy, I don't know do you lobby at all? Okay, that's right. So I do not lobby. Our organization does not lobby the legislature directly. So our role is one of finding people who want to talk about this issue, raising awareness in the press, raising awareness in the community about why this matters. And that's what we do on a variety of things, or a variety of issues, but on gun safety specifically, we will take, we've worked with national partners like the Center for American Progress and done research reports about what gun safety, what needs to happen to prevent gun violence in Iowa. We, working with a number of organizations and leaders, including Interfaith Alliance, helped put on the March for Our Lives rally several years ago at the state capitol. So we fill in where we can to help make sure that people have the ability to, like I said, to tell their story and to raise awareness about these issues. So that's been our role over the past year or so, working with Iowans for Responsible Gun Laws, helping guide messaging, helping deliver that, and helping make sure that partner organizations, that activists, that people know what a winning message looks like on this issue, because it is frankly sometimes tricky to how we talk about these things and what does a winning message mean. And we're going to get into that in just a little bit, and I look forward to that. So thanks.
I'm Wendy Abrahamson, and I'm an Episcopal priest and the rector of St. Paul's Church in Grinnell, Iowa. And I think for about 6 years, I've been a volunteer lobbyist at the state level for the Diocese of Iowa, primarily getting us on the record officially, which I think matters, in addition to trying to influence legislation, but having a public record of where the Episcopal Church stands on a lot of these issues, the church in Iowa, and then the national church as well. The Episcopal Church nationally has had many resolutions at its governing convention that encourage gun safety and make appeals to legislators to increase those kinds of laws. And our previous bishop, Alan Scarf, was a member of Bishops United Against Gun Violence. Our current bishop, new bishop, Betsy Monat, is also very active in gun safety. And I'm very, very glad for that kind of support from our bishops. We come at it from a similar perspective, wanting safety for people and trying to reduce harm and violence in our communities. And we also come at it from a faith perspective and the belief in peace and the peaceful kingdom. I've been really, really fortunate to, I didn't know anything about lobbying when I showed up at the General Assembly, but because of the grace of people like Connie and Rita taking me under their wings, I sort of muddled my way around, and that's how I came to know Tom and really appreciate the collaborative work that we do. And it's the same experience with Iowans for Responsible Gun Laws, getting to work with Matt. It's a wonderful coalition of both secular and faith-based communities, and there's information on the website on how many organizations are involved in this. Thanks primarily to Connie's work with Interfaith Alliance, bringing us together, and then Tom really, really doing a lot of the infrastructure work for how we're going to have this proceed, this group. So I'm grateful to be here and grateful to have the opportunity to work with these wonderful people on this really, really important issue. It's heartening to see how many people are here. One of the strange things that I've been experiencing, I don't know if anyone else has, it's amazing how many people don't know this is out there, don't know it exists at all. So spreading the word is important.
Well, thank you. I'm going to stand up a little bit so I can see where the slides are as we're going forward, if that's okay. Really, I think the message we want to get across to you today is that we can defeat this reckless gun amendment. I would much rather be arguing the no side, because one of the things I think we've learned over the years, it's easier to get someone to vote no than to vote yes on some things. And so I think that's working in our favor. And so my role today will really to be to explain to you exactly what is in this public measure number 1. So that's what we want people to look for on the ballot and vote no, public measure number 1. Here's the proposed amendment language, and I'm going to read this to you in case you can't see it. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The sovereign state of Iowa affirms and recognizes this right to be a fundamental individual right. Any and all restrictions to this right shall be subject to strict scrutiny. So the first thing you've probably noticed is that this is not the federal Second Amendment. Okay, it's very different. And you can see the comparison here, but here are some of the key differences. The first difference is there's no mention of the right to bear arms being connected to a well-regulated militia. So that's not present in our proposal. In our proposal, the right to bear arms is explicitly recognized as a fundamental right, which I think is important, as you'll see. And in case you didn't get that point, any restriction of the right to bear arms will be subject to strict scrutiny. So those are really the 3 main changes between the federal Second Amendment and this proposal, which we're asking people to vote no on. You know, I think the addition of strict scrutiny is very, very important. There are levels of judicial review. So by judicial review, we're if a law is challenged. And there are 3 levels that the courts look at. The first one, rational basis. This really relies on the constitutional on this level of review. The basis has usually where there's fundamentals involved. So actually, I'm not sure laws have ever been struck down on rational basis to claim. Second, intermediate scrutiny. This is the burden of proof on government regarding constitutionality. The government passes law that might affect some certain. For example, one way it's used, if it's a content neutral regulation of speech, they use intermediate scrutiny to look at that. So one example of that is when they've had like in one state, they passed a ban on sound trucks that were broadcasting loud messages through loudspeakers at night. And so some people would say, well, is that a free speech violation? And the court said, no, we're looking at this and it's not specific to the content. It's just you can't have really loud noises at night because people need to sleep. So they kept that law. And that's when in order for a law such as that to pass through an intermediate scrutiny, it just means it has to serve an important government objective and that. Okay. The judicial scrutiny, strict scrutiny, and that's what's in public here now. This is a high standard the court would look at whether the law is constitutional or not. Strict scrutiny is often used a person might sue the government. So strict scrutiny requires prove the compelling state interest behind the challenged policy, and the law or regulation is narrowly tailored to receive or to achieve that result. So we're looking ahead to a future where if this passes, what does it mean for laws? You know, pass a law perspective, that will be very difficult. You know, this scrutiny is really used race or religion, something of very high standard, or it has been if the government is regulating a particular message when it comes to speech, that has to pass a very high standard because the government does not want to regulate content of speech. You can't allow one message while forbidding another, all right? Now, what we've seen what we've seen so far at the federal Supreme Court is they have not applied strict scrutiny to gun regulation in the Second Amendment. This proposal would require it in Iowa. Measure pass is going to be very difficult. Any relation, basically, is people for the right to bear arms. So we think the Constitution proposal would guns, any health and safety that we are in our community. Makes it very difficult to anything that would pass and stand up to this strict scrutiny. Would not survive if the legislature passed that. From the Catholic bishop's perspective, they have said very clearly that the right to bear arms, as found in our Constitution, must be balanced against the safety and well-being of the populace as a whole. We think this goes too far the other way. And then finally, I'll say there's only 3 states in our union that have similar wording. Almost all states have some language that's very similar to the federal Second Amendment. Most states have that, Iowa doesn't. And in fact, if Iowa were to pass its own version of the Second Amendment, which said the same thing, I probably wouldn't be here today, right? This goes much beyond that. In fact, we're calling it the Reckless Gun Amendment. I also call it not the Second Amendment, because it's really not, all right? Only 3 states have similar language. Louisiana, Alabama, and Missouri actually have this strict scrutiny in their constitution now. And those states rank 3rd, 4th, and 5th in terms of gun deaths. So I don't think that's a place that we want to go. Gun deaths, and you'll probably hear more about this later, gun deaths are already surging in Iowa. You know, homicides that are with guns went up 80%, you know, in the last statistics we've seen year over year, 80% homicides related to guns. We don't need this amendment, and we certainly encourage you to help us defeat it. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt here to talk a little bit about some of the messaging that we can use in our own communities.
Great, thank you, Tom. I want to start with a question. I'll go to the next, oh, no, that's the right slide. Thank you, Connie. A question here. How many of you would feel comfortable having a conversation with a friend of yours or a family member of yours over the next 50-ish days till the election about this amendment? Okay, that's great. So wonderful. That is something that we will strongly encourage you to do. And I hope that we can give you the resources and information to do that. And part of that is what Tom just laid out is what does this amendment do? But I think there's also what we've seen work in effective communications and effective messaging is there's a personal component to this that if you have a friend or family member that is willing to have that discussion with you, you already have a connection with them. So you can either remind them that this is on the ballot, which we already talked about. Many people aren't aware that this is on the ballot. And maybe that's enough to get them to go all the way down and vote no on this reckless gun amendment. But if they need some convincing, we can give you some resources to do that as well. So here's what we are suggesting for people to, as a model for how to discuss this amendment. It's based on some polling and research that the coalition has done. And it also mirrors a lot of other polling and research that we have seen at Progress Iowa for what is an effective message. I'll start first that the main, and then I'll get to the slides too, but I want to give this kind of overall framework first. The first is that we're encouraging people to claim the research shows that we need to claim the voice of responsibility or responsible gun owners. And there are a lot of gun owners in this state, and we do not want to have folks be thinking that opposing this is somehow going to, have adverse impact on their ability to go hunting or keep their keep their family safe if owning a gun is what they choose to do to make that happen. But But one number that jumped out at me from some of the research we did is that only 38% of gun owners in Iowa think that gun laws are too strict in our state. So the vast majority, that's the minority of gun owners think that the gun laws are too strict. So there is room to have these discussions, even with gun owners, with a lot of different people in our community. So claim that voice of responsibility. The second is that we really encourage you, and this is where we see a correlation between this issue and other issues, is get personal about this and describe what the impact is for the community and for yourself. This is something where you can insert your own experience in the situation, because as Tom mentioned, homicides that involved a gun up by 80%, and those kind of numbers and statistics are always helpful and informative to have in a discussion and should be part of that. But it's a lot harder to argue with someone if you're saying, I want to be able to go to church and not have to worry about what might happen. I want to go to church and not worry about somebody walking in with a gun. I want to be able to drop my kids or grandkids off at school and not worry about what might happen there. And I certainly don't want them to have to live through the fear of going through lockdown drills every week, every other week, however often it is. I mean, I'll tell you personally, like to date myself a little bit, I graduated high school in the year 2000. Columbine happened my senior year. I think it was my senior year, but I never had a lockdown drill ever. And we have an entire generation of kids now who, whether or not they have had to experience an actual lockdown or an actual school shooting, they have had to live through that experience on a regular basis and had that kind of fear baked into their school existence, which is incredibly unfortunate and incredibly preventable if we have the right policies in place. So telling that kind of personal narrative is really important here. Because that's something that can make a connection with someone who might be on the fence on this issue. Because again, the statistics and the idea that, well, this is my personal freedom to have this is often the argument that we hear on the other side. But making that connection with them is incredibly important. The last piece that the research suggests is to inform people that this is not just the Second Amendment. Tom did a great job of laying that out. This is not just, I'm going to go down the ballot and this is just our right to own to bear arms, just like it says in the Second Amendment. That is absolutely not the case. So describing that to them, that this could prevent future common sense gun safety laws from being enacted. Is an important piece of this too. And then you can combine that with the idea that would make you less, more fearful or more anxious about going to church, dropping your kids off at school, whatever the personal experience is, kind of weaving that together into one story that you tell as you're having that conversation. So those are the three key points that we want you to remember. Claiming that voice of responsibility, describing the impact of what this amendment would do, especially on a personal level, and then reminding people that this is not just the Second Amendment. This goes far beyond that, and you can use that. Any of the examples that Tom gave, I think a great one is that there's only 3 other states, and they're some of the worst states in the country when it comes to gun deaths. So that is not the model that we want to follow here in Iowa. So with that, I will I'll go through the slides here, and this was some of the research that we did too. This was kind of eye-opening. You'll see that, across the board, Iowans want responsible gun laws. Well over, 70, 80, 90%. You can look through this, through the list, but everything from requiring gun safety courses, supporting background checks on every single gun purchase, and even supporting the extreme risk protection laws. That has been proven effective in some places, but that's over 70%. That's incredible to see that there's that level of support for these policies. It is also a good reminder that the gun violence epidemic in our country is truly an epidemic. It is a public health crisis. 1 American is shot every 5 minutes. 1 American dies by gunfire every 14 minutes. And 323 Americans are shot and 104 die every single day. So you can use those kind of numbers to, again, weave those into the story that you're telling when you're having those conversations, because those are, you know, your eyes should pop out of your skull when you look at those. It is it's the #1 cause of death for children as of 2020. So it disproportionately affects minority populations. Women are minority populations and women, and this is, but that #1 cause of death among children, like that's inexcusable. And when you have a chance to vote down a reckless amendment like this that can help at least stem the tide of that or course correct a little bit, then we have to take action to do that. And so these should all be bullet points in any conversation that you might have.
Yes, those are CDC.
So the question that was asked in the room was that the most current information? And Connie graciously replied that it is, and it was according to the CDC. And these are the Iowa statistics that are paired with that. So 302 people die by guns on an average every year in Iowa. And as Tom mentioned, there's an 80% increase in homicides by gun in Iowa from the year 2019 to 2020. Another important factor in this is that 78% of gun deaths in Iowa are suicides. So when you see those numbers, the vast majority are death by suicide. And so having some kind of common sense gun safety law in place could help prevent some of those deaths. And if this constitutional amendment passes, those kind of policies would likely not be able to go into effect. So all of these things are situations that we could help resolve if we had the right policies in place, but none of that is possible if this amendment passes. Is this you, Wendy? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll just turn it over to Wendy now. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Matt and Tom have already talked about the potential impact if this passes. Our current meager gun safety laws in Iowa will be vulnerable. And I also, echoing Tom, if it passes, the ability for Iowans to enact sensible gun safety legislation policy it's over for decades, because this will be enshrined in our Constitution. Very, very important to the suggestion to make sure people know this is not the Second Amendment. I think it's really telling. I don't remember which legislator it was, but someone did actually propose the Second Amendment as a replacement for this, and it was voted down. I think that says a lot. It was voted down. The word for word of the U.S. Second Amendment was rejected in favor of something with strict scrutiny, something stronger. Making current laws vulnerable, things that we would think are common sense, the ability for someone to say, I don't want firearms in my house, things like background checks, things like that, those become really vulnerable. I have a really, I think, potent real life example in my town of Grinnell. It was a few years ago, someone came to the movie theater. It was a children's film, and he came in with a gun on his belt, because we do have open carry is okay here in Iowa. It made everybody a little nervous that this was going on, and there was a lot of conversation in town about what do we do? We were able, the movie theater was able to itself say you can bring this weapon in here or not. I mean, they were free to do that. If that happened after this, if this were enacted, we might not be free to say you can't bring that gun into the movie theater, you can't bring that gun into the church. Really common sense, simple laws that seem like this should be not debatable will be up for debate. And I personally feel like they will probably be attacked. I do believe that. So it's really important. It's really important for a lot of reasons. that you involve yourself as much as you can. One, just I think it's a really, really dire situation for our state. Two, so many people don't know it exists. Three, it's on the back of the ballot, even something small like that. So just sharing with people you know, flip the ballot over, vote no. Four, these are available for you here today, yard signs. You can get your own vote no bling on your way out. And then the Iowans for Responsible Gun Laws is a really, really useful web space. Things to say. Call to action. Talk with your friends. There's lots of resources at Iowans for Responsible Gun Laws, the website, including this, the slideshow. You can download that and show it to people. There's a video version of it with narration if you don't want to speak. There's fantastic things like a handout that summarizes a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today. Another thing you might think about doing is donate. As you can imagine, we are if we compare the financial resources of this organization to ones that are proposing this, it's sort of a David and Goliath situation. So contributions, donations to Iowans for Responsible Gun Laws are really, really, really meaningful and important and will be used well. And you yourself can vote no on Election Day.
It is our, I don't know. Hello? It was working earlier. Which means I'm gonna have to travel back and forth to you, so sorry about that. So it's our custom at Crossroads that you raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone to you so that you can ask your question of the panel. Because we just have one working microphone evidently, then I'll have to run it back to the speakers. So if you'll be brief in your questions, that would be awesome so that we can get more questions happening. For those who are online, if you have questions, then just put them in the chat and Kristen will relay them to me. And I just left on the screen the list of coalition organizations. There's 35 organizations that have signed on to the coalition. There is more space. I can make a whole nother page. So if you're a part of another house of worship, if you're part of another community organization, whatever that may be, that wants to be part of this work, please do let us know and we will add those organizations to the list. But what questions do you have for our panel? So we're going this way and then I'm going over there.
I'm guessing that this was not authored in Iowa. Where is this coming from? Is this an NRA thing?
I don't know exactly, but if it's like a lot of other groups and issues, you know, there's a national coalition that works on these things and kind of brings them out to the states. And so I assume that was the genesis of this because it's very similar to what we've seen in a couple other states. I honestly.
I
think this is it working?
No. Oh, yeah, okay. They're working together. And turn that one off. Testing. Yeah, it's that we can't use both of them together, so I'm gonna use that one.
Well, I can hold on to this one and turn it on.
Oh, yeah, that way. Yep, that's
We're gonna figure it out. Yep.
Yeah. You know, we're great at technology. The other thing I would add to what Tom said is Iowa Firearms Coalition is the main driver of the passing yes. So that's the other organization to pay attention to is Iowa Firearms Coalition.
What does it take for a constitutional amendment to pass or fail? Like with bond issues, you have 60%. Is it 51% of all who vote or just who vote on that measure?
50, 50 plus one.
50 plus one.
Well, yeah, it's 50, it's just 50 plus one is, that's all it's going to need of a vote of the people of Iowa. It does have to go through a process where it has to pass two separate general assemblies. So it had to pass through one general assembly, then there was an election, then it has to pass again before it goes to the people. But you just need a bare majority to do that.
Tom, just let Tom keep it, like, when you're done, turn it off, and then we're just gonna have to do it that way.
And only one vote by the people.
Well, except in some states.
Hi, my name is Greg. I've been through to a few houses of worship, and there's security officers with guns, and some of the parishioners have weapons in their holsters. By voting no, will this come to an end?
So your question is, if we vote no for this, would a house of worship still be able to have security and armed and stuff like that?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, yeah, no.
I don't have a question, just have a comment. You might ask people who are hunters if they want to be out in the woods with some weird person out there with a gun.
I have two questions. One is, how does this, if passed, interact with the Supreme Court decision, which could potentially strike down state gun laws if they were challenged? And the second is the reference to sovereign state of Iowa. That phrase is not in the current Iowa Constitution. And what does that mean? Certainly the 10th Amendment is a red flag issue among political conservatives. And what are the implications of stating in our Constitution that Iowa is a sovereign state?
Well, to your second question, I have not seen any legal analysis on what that would mean to put that in the Constitution. So I don't know the answer to that. Maybe you do. You've seen that.
So sovereign state is in the Constitution under
okay.
some sections. So there is language in the.
So what Connie's saying is that there is language in our Constitution already that does say sovereign state of Iowa. Related to your first question, really, if this goes into our state constitution, whatever happens at the federal level would probably have very little effect, either pro or con, because we've protected it in our own constitution.
I think that some of us didn't necessarily hear or understand the gentleman at the back of the room in your answer about the weapon in house of worship.
Well, Greg, is that right? Yeah, what I heard you say is that right now, some churches have people there to protect others, and those people are wearing weapons. Security guards. And so what would this have to do with that? I don't think it would change the status quo on that either way. And my understanding is there are some churches that do that. There are some churches, most churches that don't. And whether you think that's a good idea or not is kind of up to you. But did that answer your question?
Can I add to that, Tom? I'll just do it here.
Yeah.
Just turn that one off. So we still in Iowa are a permit license carry state. That doesn't change. That won't change with whether or not the amendment passes or not. And so people can carry a gun wherever they want. As Wendy was alluding to, businesses can say you can't have a gun in here, in this place of worship, et cetera. So houses of worship can say that. But generally speaking, Iowa is a permitless carry state. That doesn't change with this amendment, whether it is passed or whether it fails. Everybody in this room could have a gun. Now Plymouth Church could say,
Can I'm on, okay.
so anybody could be carrying a gun in this room, right? Plymouth Church could also say we are a weaponless facility. And so they would have to, you would have to make that argument and you would have to say, no, you cannot have weapons in our church. Our office could say we are a weaponless office. And we could make that decision and we could put the sign on our window. But what Greg is asking is for houses of worship that choose to have security carry weapons, they still have that right to do that. And they will still continue to have that right to do that regardless of the outcome of the amendment. Does that make sense?
The only thing I would add to that is that while the current policy wouldn't change, that if this passes, then our ability to roll back any of these dangerous laws that are now on the books or put future common sense safety laws into place would be nearly gone, I think. And so that's what's really critical here. It's not that we are necessarily going to turn things around with this vote, but what they're trying to do by putting this in the Constitution is open the floodgates even more to for irresponsible, potentially dangerous, violent behavior. So that's what we're looking at here. So if the status quo wouldn't change, but like what we're trying to do is make it so we can in the future, hopefully, turn this back.
That's a really important point. Matt's making a really important point. I anyway tend to focus on it would limit severely our ability to enact gun safety legislation. The converse is true as well. Current law, such as the Stand Your Ground law, it would be very difficult to roll that back because the amendment, if it passes, puts the thumb on the scale of the gun owning constitutional right over and against everything else. So it's both sides. It's really important.
What other questions do you have? I'm going to go here and then here.
Just really a comment. One of the sponsors of that bill was Stephen Holt from the area that I come from. I'm sure you visited with him several times. He is a guy that absolutely will not bend. He wants every person in Iowa to have a gun. You cannot talk safety. You cannot talk hunting. He has tunnel vision. My only point is that if this vote is on the back page, if we know somebody that's really violently against them, maybe you shouldn't even talk to them. Maybe they won't find it in the back page.
It seems to me the most important part of this whole effort, and this was talked about at the time it was debated both times, was the strict scrutiny provision. Would you devote a little more time to why that is so important?
Oh, I mean, I'm not an attorney, say that, and Tom can cover pieces that I missed, but like this is the high. It's a very high bar for the when it's strict to be found to be able to put it on this. Then for that because when you said the in favor of the So, I got that right. Go ahead.
On the level, you discriminate, right? Discriminate on guns. It's on the same level. This
Specific legal things too. I mean, it might sound like is about how remote legal fire is an accident.
Point out in the but it is also about current law. And so I would expect if this passes in November, current law is my right to a few public safety laws around guns left on the books because of legislation that was passed in 2017 and 2019. And those will continue to diminish as they get challenged in court. And it ties the hands of the courts. It's not only ties the hands of the legislature, but it ties the hands of the court of how they review those challenged laws. They can only look at it through the lens of strict scrutiny. So hopefully that helps as well. This is where I was going.
I'm curious, has there been any polling group or research done on where we stand today if this folks want to vote today?
Nothing recently that's been out there publicly. There was a Des Moines Register poll that, and I'm struggling to remember when that was published, but it's been it's a couple years ago. Because this, as we said, has been debated in the legislature a couple times before it was, now on the ballot, but it showed it very close. It was pretty much a dead heat. So, but I have not seen anything more recent than that.
In Eames, we've been going door to door and we've been handing out little leaflets. And we started out with a vote no leaflet, and that stopped people who would probably support guns from even talking to us. But when we changed it to an educational thing, learn about this. This is a public safety thing for Iowans. And, check it because we gave them the website. The ones who probably would have read it and voted yes, well, they're voting no. So make sure you educate them and I feel you can't really say, vote no, vote no. Educate them also if they want to vote yes.
The other thing I would say is that talk about public measure 1. Because that's what they're going to see first thing when they flip the ballot over. It's going to be public measure 1, and then they'll see where it's run gun, but it's vote no on public measure 1. There's a question online about if this amendment would pass, would it impact mental health laws that protect around mental health and somebody having access to gun. And I want to be clear that if this amendment passes, it changes nothing in the laws immediately. The laws have to be challenged in court. So just because it passes doesn't mean that anything changes in terms of laws, but we will see challenges in courts, and that's when things will start to change. It has to go through the court system. So just to make sure that we're clear on that. There was a hand over here.
Do I see law enforcement on that list? And if not, why not?
Well, I think you'll see some law enforcement on it. You'll also see other law enforcement who are just saying, we need this and this is a big deal. So it's, in my experience, and I'll let you guys talk, it's been kind of person by person. We definitely have people who are gun owners and gun rights supporters who are part of this coalition. who think that this goes too far, but there are others that would say they want it.
Yeah, I would just add that, that as part of this coalition, there are going to be a number of public events where we encourage people to vote no, but educate them. And one of the, I believe at least one of those is going to include some folks from the law enforcement community that's going to come out against it. So, yeah.
One thing.
Thank you. Getting to the idea that people need to be educated about this, absolutely. I just wanted to make clear that the coalition provides speakers. So if you have an organization and you think that this would be important, useful information for them, get in touch with Iowans for Responsible Gun Laws, and we can send someone to come and meet with your group and probably use this slideshow and answer some questions, but for education.
I think we have a time crunch too that we have to be aware of. Absentee ballots will start to be mailed out on Monday, the 19th. And so we have to start with October.
I just have a comment about the application of this strict scrutiny to all of our existing laws, if this should pass. In the state of Missouri, which is one of the states that have adopted something like this, I call it the NRA because NRA is a part of this stuff so much they own it. There was a case, the case that went up to the Supreme Court of Missouri was where a person had violated a law that imposed a more onerous penalty if you sold drugs while you were in possession of a gun. And this person was appealing to the Supreme Court of Missouri that he should not be having this more onerous punishment assigned because the restriction against carrying a gun while you were selling drugs did not pass strict scrutiny. Now, the state of Missouri Supreme Court managed to talk its way out of that somehow, and it wasn't very persuasive. And I think this indicates that anybody who's charged with violating anything that's in Chapter 724 of the Code of Iowa is going to defend himself by saying this does not pass strict scrutiny. And I know some of the literature that I've seen from the NRA actually includes the phrase, the weapon of your choice. So people with machine guns and Stinger missiles in their basement are going to be litigating if they're caught.
Other questions? I'm getting my steps in today.
So if I'm a gun owner or I'm speaking to a gun owner, what can I tell that person about, what is the impact of them? Am I going to lose anything if I vote no on this?
No, they would not lose anything. And I think if they vote yes, I think what they would lose is, what we would all lose is the chance to have a safer community. And, and I think you tie in any personal type of impact that this would have on you. And, but they would certainly not lose their right to own a weapon or firearm. And so that would not change. But we would have the ability to create a state where, like we talked about earlier, where you could drop your kids off to school and feel safe about it, or safer about it. You could go to church, your place of worship, and feel safer than maybe you do right now. So anyway, they would not lose any rights or any freedoms if this amendment fails. Yeah.
So the way I'm seeing it, if someone is drastically mentally ill, they are entitled to carry a firearm. and there's nothing that we could do about it. Or we would never be able to pass a law that says, if you think everyone is the devil, kill them, you know, because that would have to pass the strict scrutiny bar for that law.
Certainly be more difficult. Yeah, I mean, it would be more difficult. It's, you know, there's not 100% on either. I mean, your example of how the Supreme Court of Missouri was able to kind of get through something, that sort of little thing might still exist, but there's no argument that it wouldn't be much more difficult. So that's a pretty extreme situation, right? Some of the just modern, you know, normal going to the movies, those kinds of things, definitely it would be very, very difficult to pass laws or to repeal laws that just have to do with everyday life, going where you go and being somewhat confident, because the norm right now in Iowa is that they're, you know, you can pretty much take them anywhere already. We wouldn't be able to do anything about that. But something like that, not 100%, but it could definitely be challenged in court.
I mean, I think that's part of the issue, and the problem with this is we don't know for sure. I mean, right now, if you have a felony, you're not supposed to be able to carry a weapon. Is that going to continue? Is that going to be challenged? We don't know the answer to that. I know what this amendment says, and I know it's a fundamental right. So that's what we're going to be dealing with.
It says every person. It has no stipulation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Other questions? So I put back up on the screen, I'll cue Kristen to find that, it's back a couple. Just a reminder of the talking points that our panel has talked about. Tell people it's not the Second Amendment, that the majority of Iowans who own guns, responsible gun owners, and law enforcement support common sense gun laws and oppose this amendment, and that Public Measure 1, the Reckless Gun Amendment, will put Iowans at risk, including children and our communities. And you can build your story around those talking points as you talk with your friends and family. As each of our panel members have said, there's too many people who don't know that it's even on the ballot. And we need your help. We need your help to talk with your friends and family. We need your help to, if you're part of a house of worship, to talk about it with folks in your house of worship. Have a forum, invite one of us to come and speak. We would love to do that. But we need your help, and we need people to know that this is on the ballot, it's on the back of the ballot. Help me to thank our panel members. That you are inclined and we would if you have to take one or 15 signs you have friends in your yard, or please do.